Hey, all right, just breezing through this hour here. Lots of stuff happening. One thing is for sure, the president has given some pretty direct guidance on the fact that there will not be a nationwide quarantine, at least at this point. And that's probably a good sign to quell some of the fear, fright, and hysteria out there. I know there's a lot of anxiety out there, but stay calm. We have great people at the helm like Anthony Fauci, our president leading the charge, Mike Pence leading the coronavirus task force. So the highest people in our government are on top of this thing, and we shouldn't be panicking. We should just be taking instruction and socially distancing. I am, I believe, at an appropriate social distance from my next guest, Melissa Chen. She's New York editor for Spectator USA. Welcome back.
Thank you, John.
So nice to have you back.
I wish it was in better circumstances. But
yeah, we have a lot to talk about.
We do.
And I know you guys just recently launched here in the U.S. a few months back, and what a time to be reporting on what's happening in New York, which seems to be one of the hot spots for growth now.
Yep.
But I do want to show you this tweet that the president put out, and I'd like to get your perspective on it. He said, Cuomo wants all states to be treated the same, but all states aren't the same. Some are being hit hard by the Chinese virus. Some are being hit practically not at all. New York is a very big hotspot. West Virginia has thus far 0 cases. Andrew, keep politics out of it. So I want to ask you on 2 levels. You're the editor for the New York Spectator USA. What do you think Andrew Cuomo's response has been so far here in New York, which is a big hotspot?
I think activating the Guard, he was one of the first governors to activate the National Guard early, and they've set up, these drive-through testing the same way that South Korea had done earlier. In that way, you isolate the testing procedures away from the hospitals, which is a really good policy, because you don't want a bunch of potential COVID-19 patients to be congregating in the hospital. So it's a good way to isolate that. I think he's actually been pretty effective. I wish Bill de Blasio had actually closed the schools a little earlier, but he waited a little too long. But that.
Yeah, I talked to a state senator here in New York who said that 2 weeks that he waited to close the schools could really be hurting us now.
Right.
But that's for another day. I want to go back to Trump's tweet. There's been some significant outrage because he used this generic term, Chinese virus.
Yeah.
And you have some lineage there. What is that? What are the real effects of that in the community?
Well, it's not just, it's previously you had certain members of his administration who used the term Wuhan virus, or, people were also angry at Fox News for calling it the Chinese coronavirus. I think there's no pretense now about where this virus came from. Everybody knows where it came from, how it started. It also started, in Wuhan, China, and through some cultural practices that were very unsavory, i.e., eating, sort of consuming live wild animals that were purchased at these markets, wet markets that were breeding grounds for viruses. And the thing is that I don't think that just trying to debate about what words we or racism is, I think, misguided, because everyone already knows where this virus came from. And what was naming convention? It has been a naming convention for about a century, that we name viruses from its origin, right? So West Nile virus, you're looking at Zika, Ebola, they all are named after places where they were first found and isolated. And this
Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome, the MERS,
or German measles, Spanish flus. It's not just countries that are non-white, basically, so non-white majority.
You guys over at Spectator are great, and you've been branching out here as the New York editor. Tell me a little about your most recent column.
So the most recent column I wrote was about how pandemics shape your psychology, because being primed by this pathogen threat constantly, like you see the news, it's like 24/7. It really does something to how people think, how people approach almost every aspect of their lives. So I was trying to look at how that really affects thinking, because how you think will affect everything else. It's going to affect your politics as well, and what are the ramifications for 2020 from a mass psychology point of view.
Yeah, I think I try to blurt out all the information I can get to make people aware. But it seems like most people right now are being shaped and driven by the fear,
Correct.
fright, and hysteria.
Right. So what I found in my article was this thing called the behavioral immune system, and what it is basically a suite of psychological mechanisms that we have sort of developed because like fighting an infection, especially something like COVID-19, it's very costly, right? So once it hits you, the virus hits you, your immune system's trying to fight it off, and at that point, it's potentially devastating for your body, and it's a reactive mechanism. Versus if you develop psychological mechanisms that are proactive, so it makes you avoid the threat before you even get to the point where it's affecting you, you are going to leave more offspring. So this is an evolutionary mechanism that has developed over time. And so people that have this very active behavioral immune system are likely to leave more offspring, and therefore we have these tendencies to behave in certain ways. So I can go into some examples of this. One way that pathogen threat affects people is that they become a bit more xenophobic and nationalist during the time that they're thinking about
Is
germs.
that the worst thing? But I mean,
No,
for people to be,
but that's
band
my
together
point.
as a country.
No,
Yeah.
but that's actually my point. Is
Yeah.
that in the article I explore why? Because this is what happened actually in the 15th century, right? The Native Americans were decimated by smallpox brought by the Europeans, and they brought actually infectious disease to their settlement. And today their DNA actually bears the signature of these viruses.
Wow.
So there is reason to be fearful of foreign agents under these conditions, and this is embedded in our ancient neural circuits.
All right, Melissa, we're going to take a quick break. Can you just hang out with us
Sure,
for a little
I
while?
can.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. Melissa Chen's going to stay with us. Gerald Salente, founder of the Trends Research Institute, is going to join us a little later on in the hour. Quick break, more Liquid Lunch right after.